My father kicked me out of the house after he married my late mom's younger sister, Lisa, because he said I reminded him too much of my mom. I ended up moving in with my uncle, David, his older brother. But now, my dad is desperate to reconcile because he and Lisa recently had a baby, and everyone is treating his child the same way he treated me years ago. It all started with my mom's diagnosis of breast cancer. She found out during a routine checkup and the doctors discovered a lump in her breast. When she got home with the test results, she kept saying it couldn't be real, that it had to be a mistake. At the time, I was just a teenager and didn't fully understand how much cancer would change our lives. Mom sought second and third opinions, but the diagnosis was the same each time. I remember coming home one afternoon to find her crying on the living room floor. I kept asking if something was wrong, but she just looked so exhausted and defeated. That night, she sat me and my dad down to break the news that she had breast cancer and would start chemotherapy soon. My dad looked shattered. He sat in silence, unable to speak. My mom, though, tried to stay strong for us. She smiled at me like everything would be okay and reassured me that she would fight with everything she had. I had so many questions, but I didn't know how to ask them. Later that night, I locked myself in my room and started searching online about cancer. I came across words like chemotherapy, stages, and survival rates. They terrified me. I didn't know how to help my mom or what to do. I felt completely powerless. The months following her diagnosis were some of the darkest times of my life. My mom, who had always been the strongest person I knew, became so frail. The chemotherapy was relentless, it drained her physically and emotionally. She lost weight rapidly and couldn't leave her bed most days. One of the hardest days was when I walked into the bathroom to find her shaving her hair. Her beautiful auburn hair, which she loved so much, had started falling out in clumps. She stood there, trembling, tears streaming down her face as she finished the job. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching, helpless to do anything. My dad wasn't any help either. He emotionally checked out. He had always been quiet and reserved, but during my mom's battle, he withdrew even more. He never accompanied her to doctor appointments or helped her after she lost her hair. They had frequent arguments about his lack of support, but he just avoided her, and me. When my mom lost her battle with cancer, I hoped it would bring my dad and me closer, that we could grieve and heal together. But instead, he completely shut down. He turned to alcohol as an escape. My dad began drinking heavily. He would disappear for hours, sometimes the entire day, and come back so drunk that strangers had to help him get home. I'd come home from school to an empty house, scrounging for whatever food was left in the fridge because Dad forgot to go grocery shopping. Dinner was often bread and peanut butter, eaten alone at a quiet table. The house, once filled with warmth because of my mom, felt cold and lifeless. Eventually, my mom's sister Lisa entered the picture. About a year after my mom passed, Lisa moved to town for a new job and asked if she could stay with us temporarily. My dad was hesitant at first, but I convinced him. I thought having Lisa around might bring some normalcy back into our lives. At first, I was glad she came. Lisa reminded me of my mom in many ways, kind, bubbly, and attentive. She cooked meals, asked me about school, and even told me stories about her and my mom's childhood. For the first time in ages, it felt like someone cared about me. But then, Lisa started spending more time with my dad. She encouraged him to stop drinking and be present for me again. Slowly, my dad began changing. He started staying home in the evenings and even came to a couple of my school events. I was grateful to Lisa, thinking she was helping us heal as a family. I couldn't have been more wrong. One day, I came home from school and found Lisa and my dad kissing in the kitchen. The same kitchen where my mom used to make us pancakes on Sundays. They froze when they saw me, and my dad rushed over, stammering apologies. I couldn't even process what was happening. I just turned and ran out of the house, my heart pounding. I sat on a park bench, feeling nauseous. How could Lisa do this? She was my mom's sister. And my dad, how could he so easily erase my mom's memory? Eventually, my dad found me and brought me home, where they both tried to explain. Lisa said they had fallen for each other and couldn't control their feelings. My dad called it moving on and told me I should understand. Then Lisa had the nerve to say I should be happy for my dad because he deserved to find happiness after losing my mom. I lost it. I yelled at Lisa, asking her how she could betray my mom like this. I demanded to know how she thought my mom would feel if she could see them now. For a moment, Lisa looked ashamed, but my dad snapped at me, saying I was being disrespectful and didn't understand adult relationships. He grounded me and sent me to my room. I stormed up to my room, slamming the door behind me. I cried until I couldn't anymore. It felt like I was losing my mom all over again, not just her memory, but the home and family she had worked so hard to build. Over the next few weeks, my dad and Lisa didn't try to hide their relationship anymore. Lisa moved her belongings into my parents' bedroom, the room that still felt like my mom's. Bit by bit, she started removing my mom's things, her photos, her favorite chair, and even the little decorations that reminded me of her. It felt like my mom was being erased, piece by piece. When I protested, Lisa would complain to my dad, calling me difficult or immature. My dad always took her side. Every time. He started treating me like I was the problem, like my grief was some kind of burden he didn't want to deal with. Then Lisa crossed the line. She told me I needed to move out of my bedroom, the only place in the house that still felt like mine. She wanted my room for her work and hobbies and thought the smaller guest room would suit me better since I'd eventually be leaving for college anyway. I was furious. I told her she could use the guest room for her hobbies, but she refused, saying it wasn't big enough for her needs. I begged my dad to intervene, but he brushed me off, saying I should stop being dramatic. The argument escalated until I finally screamed, "Why do you hate me so much?" My dad, without missing a beat, snapped back, "Because you remind me of your mother too much. You look like her. You talk like her. I can't stand it." His words knocked the wind out of me. I stared at him, stunned. My own father had just admitted that he couldn't bear to look at me because I reminded him of the woman he claimed to love. In a moment of anger and heartbreak, I yelled, "I wish it had been you who died instead of Mom. She would have never made me feel this way." He slapped me across the face. The sting on my cheek was nothing compared to the pain I felt inside. I ran to my room, locked the door, and sobbed. I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer. The next day, I called my Uncle David, my dad's older brother, and told him everything. David was furious. He came over the following day to confront my dad. I stayed upstairs, but I could hear the shouting. David called my dad out for disrespecting my mom's memory and mistreating me. He didn't hold back, listing every way my dad had failed me. David also told my grandparents what had been happening. They were horrified to learn about my dad's relationship with Lisa and how I'd been treated. My grandparents called my dad to berate him for his actions, particularly for allowing Lisa to erase my mom's presence in the house. They said they couldn't believe he was prioritizing his own selfish desires over his daughter's well-being. Between David's confrontation and the pressure from my grandparents, my dad reluctantly agreed to let me move in with David. He said he'd send money each month for my expenses, as if that would make up for everything. I didn't care about his promises. I just wanted out. David and his girlfriend, Rebecca, helped me pack my things, and I left without looking back. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt safe. Living with David and Rebecca was like night and day compared to what I'd endured. They treated me with kindness and respect, and they genuinely cared about me. Rebecca made sure I was eating well and staying on top of my schoolwork, and David always found time to talk to me and make me feel supported. My grandparents started visiting regularly too. They never spoke much about my dad or Lisa, but it was clear they disapproved of the relationship. Even my mom's side of the family had cut ties with Lisa, refusing to forgive her for betraying my mom's memory. For a while, things were peaceful. Then, one day, I overheard my grandparents talking to David. They mentioned that Lisa had given birth to a baby boy and that my dad had tried reaching out to them, asking them to meet the baby. But they wanted nothing to do with him or Lisa. I tried not to let the news bother me, but it was hard not to think about it. Even though I felt no connection to the baby, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for him. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. Then, out of nowhere, my dad called me. He said he missed me and wanted to fix things. I stayed quiet, unsure of what he was trying to say. Then he mentioned the baby, telling me I had a little brother now and asking if I wanted to meet him. I told him, flat out, that I didn't consider the baby my sibling and had no interest in reconnecting. That's when he started pleading, saying he wanted me to come home and that we could rebuild our family. I couldn't believe how oblivious he was. He genuinely thought I could forget everything he and Lisa had done and just move on. I refused him, telling him that I already had a family, David and Rebecca, and I wasn't going to leave them. That's when he turned nasty, accusing me of holding a grudge and claiming my mom would be disappointed in me for not forgiving him. He said I was selfish for not giving Lisa and the baby a chance and that I needed to stop being stubborn so we could rebuild the family. I couldn't believe the nerve of him. I told him bluntly, "You stopped being my family the day you chose Lisa over me and over Mom's memory. Don't expect me to clean up the mess you made." Then I hung up. When I told David what had happened, he was furious. He assured me that my dad couldn't force me to do anything and that I was safe with him. I felt relieved knowing I had someone like David to stand up for me. A few weeks later, my dad showed up unannounced at David's house. He was yelling from the driveway, demanding to see me. David went outside to confront him and told him to leave, but my dad refused. I finally came downstairs to tell him to stop making a scene. He started guilt-tripping me again, saying he regretted everything he had done and just wanted me to come back home. He claimed he was trying to fix things, and that it was time for me to stop being so difficult. I'd had enough. I told him, "I've moved on. You should too. I don't want anything to do with you, Lisa, or your baby. I'm happy with David and Rebecca, and I'll never come back to your house. We are not a family anymore." He stood there for a moment, stunned, before storming off without another word. I felt nothing but relief as I watched him leave. Update: a few months have passed since my last update, and I've officially turned 18. My dad hasn't tried to contact me again, and as far as I know, my family continues to distance themselves from him and Lisa. I've started college and am working part-time. David and Rebecca have offered to help me financially if I need it, and I feel secure knowing I have their support. My grandparents visit me often, and their love has been a huge comfort during this time. I don't think about my dad or Lisa much anymore. They made their choices, and I've made mine. I'm moving forward with my life, and I'm surrounded by people who genuinely care about me. That's what matters now. Thank you to everyone who has supported me and given me the courage to stand up for myself. I've learned that family isn't about blood, it's about the people who truly have your back. Thank you for watching the video, subscribe and turn on notifications to be the first to have Radish and real stories with you. Have a great day.